Hello there. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about how to deform a terrain on a landscape. So just a quick note, this is on sand, but you can easily implement all of this on snow, on mud, or anything pretty much that you want. And it doesn't really work on landscapes. I don't know why, but this technique doesn't really work on landscapes. So if you want to use it on a complete landscape, you have to first export the whole mesh and then use it in a BP. But anyway, this is what we're going to get after everything we are going to do. So to first do everything, you need to type in UV, support UV from hit results. You need to make sure that this is on. It's off by default though, but you have to make it on and then restart the editor. And then the first thing you have to do is to right click, create a new material. I've already created one. Let's call it M underline brush. And this is kind of an old one. So let me apply and save. So the first thing that we have to do is a radial gradient exponential. Yeah, this is the one, and then Control C, Control V, and then from this one a max, and then you have to Control V to create a vector parameter. This is for the right foot, and Control V, I'm sorry, not the Control V, hold V and left click, and left, this is for the left foot, and we have to mask it out. So component mask, Control C, Control V, one for this one, and then these are going to the position, and hold S on your keyboard, left click, one for the density. I've already created one, so I don't really need to create another one, and one for radius. So radius should go to the radius for both of them. Density should go to the density for both of them as well. The default value for radius is, as you can see, 0.03. The density is 0.3. You can easily change it. It's just the radius is how big your footprints are gonna be. So for this example, I am using a fairly big amount, but you can go as small as so you could just make it look like a real footprint, like not like some huge deformation if you're working on sand. But right now I don't really prefer it to be a small footprint, so I'm using something that's not really small. A small value would be like 0.01, but for me 0.03 is fine. And of course we're going to right click, create a material instance, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we have to create a render target. So right click, texture, render target. I've named it RT underline sand. Open it up. You won't have this, of course. It's gonna be already complete black. It's 256 by default, if I'm not wrong. I am using 512 in both sides. You can go higher. It's gonna cost performance. I wouldn't really recommend it, but it's your choice. You know what to do best. And RTF R8 is because right now we are just going to be using the red channel, so this is like the most performant render target format we're going to use. And after that, we are going to create the base material that is going to contain the sand on it. So right click again, create a new material. For me, I've called it M underline sand. this is the whole material I've created, and I'm gonna explain everything step by step. So the textures that I am using are the textures that are coming from the Quixel Bridge. So if you don't know how to use Quixel Bridge, so this is the material from Quixel Bridge. Window, Quixel Bridge, and you can just go ahead and add any material, any surface that you want, and just enjoy it. So this is the material I'm using on my whole terrain and whole landscape, and I can just open the instance and open the find actually the textures right here. So these are all the textures that I can use. So I can just go ahead and drag all of them into my scene, which I already did. So no need to do it again. Okay, so this is the render target we are using. So just go ahead and make sure in the materials folder, the render target we just created, make sure it's a underline set. Drag it into the scene, and then let's create it together. Hold L on your keyboard, and as I told you, we only need the red value of this one. So hold S. This is gonna be the depth 1, because I've already created depth. I found that -20 would do the job, so go ahead and give it a value of -20. You don't really need this one, so anyway. Okay, so you have to multiply it by the vertex normal as well, because this is gonna go into the world position offset. I'm not gonna go debug everything in front of you, because that will take a while, like a half an hour at least, to debug everything and make sure everything works. I'm just gonna go explain everything and make sure that if you copy everything as the way I did it, you will get the same results. So hold M on your keyboard, right click vertex normal world space. This is gonna go this way. And then add this multiply to another multiply, which is so this is, we can easily bypass this one, but this is just giving us a little bit of more detail in our texture. So if you pay a close attention, it's got a little bit of detail on the edges. We really need that. It adds a little bit to the realisticness of the whole scene. So we really need that. So let's go ahead and add that. This is just a texture sample. Just type in texture sample and come in here, type in noise. I've just used the tiling noise 05. And we're going to use the red value, go into the power, and of course hold S for a scalar parameter and call it power 1 probably. The default value is 1 as always. I didn't really change this one, it's just there for more freedom. And multiply it by the detail. I changed the detail though, this is really important. So detail 1, it's default to 10. You can change the default and get different results. It's just, it makes sure that the texture you're using is gonna go into the scene more or less. So this is the value you are changing the whole details with. And then you just go multiply it by this one, and that's that. It just goes into the world position offset. And oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you something important. This material right here, it's additive. So this one right here is blend mode is set to additive, and shading model is set to unlit. I haven't tried it in another way. I don't know what happens if you try it in another way. So I don't really, I mean, you can go ahead and try different ways to do it, try different shading models, try different blending modes. I mean, I don't really think that it would work without the additive, but you can go ahead and try different shading models. And this one's just a simple opaque default lead material. So this is what we've created. It goes to the world position offset. This is just the texture coordinates. So texture coordinates, you can just hold M, hold S, or whatever, or UV, doesn't really matter. And then you can, or maybe not, it's your choice, but I've found that it helped a little bit. And this is going to the world position offset. Oh, also, these are the textures that I use that are coming from the sand material that's coming from the Quicksilver bridge. So you can use the texture coordinates in those as well. So you can just hook all of them up to the UVs in the texture coordinate. So this is the main texture of albedo. This is the normal texture going to normal. This is the roughness texture, and this is something really small. You can just type in Dieter temporal AA. It just makes the whole material to blend in a little bit more smoothly with the whole landscape. So because if you don't use it, just it will change a bit. It will be more obvious that these two are different meshes, but with it, it blends a little bit more. So you won't really, I mean, you can tell if you pay close attention to it, but it's not easy to really distinguish these two meshes from each other. Anyway, okay. So these are the two materials. The next thing we have to do is, we have to create the actor for this. So the UV heat I just told you, it doesn't work on landscape. I didn't really find any way to make it work. The people are suggesting that if you want to make it work on landscape, you have to make sure that the landscape is a static mesh. So you can just go ahead and probably convert it to a static mesh, or export the whole actor from, export everything pretty much, probably shift select all the landscape on your scene and file, export selected, and then export everything and import them back to your scene. This is what they suggested. I didn't really do that. I don't want to do that because it will be really performance heavy on my game. If I want to have this thing on the whole landscape, this is like a huge landscape on my scene. So let's go ahead and create the blueprint actor. Right click, blueprint class, actor, and then you have to give it a name. I called it BP underline sand. So in here you'll need two planes, or in this case you'll only need one plane because you won't really need the collision. So if you pay close attention, this plane right here, it doesn't have collision, so the character's feet goes into it. It doesn't have collision, and there's a reason for it, but because it's just going down. So let's go ahead and add a plane for our scene. Just add a plane. You'll need two planes. One is for the sand or snow or mud or whatever you want, and the second one is you need two planes. Just right click, duplicate, and the second one, which is a little bit lower than the first one, is only for the collision. The first one has no collision, so instead of default it has no collision. The second one is gonna block all dynamics, and it is going to be hidden in game and probably not visible as well. Okay, it is so weird. I probably have to restart the editor. It's Unreal Engine 5.2. It has a lot of bugs. It's in beta state. But anyway, okay, so this is the event begin play. After you created and added the planes, you have to, I mean, not the event play, begin play. I have something else to show you. So the plane that you need to use for, as I said, you are changing the world position offset, and this is based on the triangle count. So if you have a normal plane, it is going to be like, oh, it's not visible. It is going to have, it's so low poly. You don't really need that. I mean, you can't use such a thing. You need to have something that's so high poly. You can either create something in Blender or 3D Studio Max, whatever, or you can come in here and go to the modeling tab, create a rect here, probably make sure it's up, and make sure the width and depth are all the way to the 1000, and width subdivision and depth subdivisions are set to 500 or 200 or 1000, doesn't matter, and accept it, and find the mesh it's created for you. It's usually in the third person maps generated, whatever your name is, and then you can find your mesh there. It's as easy as that. And make sure it's not enabled, it's not supporting nanite. If it is supporting nanite, it just doesn't work. I don't know why. It's probably one of the many bugs that Unreal Engine 5.2 has. Okay, so after that you are going to into the event begin play and create dynamic material instance, and right click, promote it to a variable. Let's call it brush. The parent though is the m underline brush instance, so the brush is this one. And if you remember, we've created an instance from it, so left click on it, go to the BP underline sand, and make sure it's parented here. Click on this one here. And then we have to make sure that every time we begin the play session, we are clearing the render target for ourselves. So just type in clear render target 2D. And the render target is selection. Render target is RT online sand, the one we created together. This one. Okay. After that, we have to create a custom event, which is called a custom event, and let's call it draw, like this, draw. And then coming from there, you need to use a sequence node, and then you are going to use the mRline brush instance, which is right now set to a variable, and set the vector parameter for it. And one is gonna be for the left, one's gonna be for the right. So like what we did here, it's called right, left. Make sure the spelling is correct. This is really important. So you can maybe go ahead and Control C, Control V. Is that so? And then the value is going to be, so in the custom event that you have, you can create a new input argument, and make sure it is vector 2D, this one right here, and name them right and left. And then for the right, vector okay, to vector. Okay, so just type in to vector and then to vector from vector 2D. And then just connect it to this one here. It will convert it to a linear color structure. And after that, we're going to draw the material to render target. So draw material to render target. And the material is gonna be the brush we created, this one. Oh no, not this one, this one. This is for the render target. So this will be drawn to the render target we are using here. So this what you see is going to be drawn using this material, and the texture from the render target is gonna be this one right here, the render target we just created, this one. And Control C, Control V, we have to draw a material to render target for this one as well. One is gonna be for right, one is gonna be for the left, and this is what we need in BP underline sand. After that, we have to go to the world settings and BP underline third person character or whatever you're using, doesn't really matter. Go ahead into it. So go ahead and create a custom event, call it something. I've called it sand deform because I'm using sand, and make sure something. Make sure you call the custom event you created in the movement input. So every time the character is moving or every time the player is moving the character, this event is being called. Okay. Make sure this one's set right here. So we've created this custom event, and then from that we just type in sequence because we need one for the right and one for the left, and line trace by channel. Line trace by channel, this one right here, it's gonna be tracing based on visibility, and it's gonna trace complex. This is so important. Sometimes it may not work if you don't check this one out. Okay, so where does it trace from and to where it's going to be tracing from? We are going to be using the mesh and get socket location. So which socket location? So let's go ahead into the mesh. We need to use the wherever the characters putting their feet on, so we have to trace from their feet to the ground to see if there's a ground that's gonna be deformed underneath their feet. So we need a foot. So foot underline L, right click, copy selected bones names, and just type in Control V, foot underline L. And you do the same for foot underline R. In this case, in this sequence, then 0, we are tracing from foot R to the ground. So this is going to the start point of it, and then subtract 50 in the Z axis. And then this is going to be the end of it. Okay. You can probably go ahead and debug it using this, but I'm not going to do that right now. And from this, we're going to be using a branch. If it's not hitting something, you don't really need to be processing any information. And from the out hit, break hit results, make sure it's expanded. And from the actor, make sure you cast to the BP sand, or whatever you call it. This one right here, the one that we have two planes on each other. And what we're going to do from the BP send is we have to, this is the custom event we created. We have to call this event every time that the characters running, walking on the surface on this actor, we are calling this BP send, we are casting to it, and we are calling this draw. So just type in draw from this one. And from the out hit results, not the result, out hit, just type in UV and find collision UV. This won't be shown if you haven't turned this one on. So this is important. Make sure you have done this correctly. And this is gonna go into the right. The target is definitely BP send. And for the then one, it's gonna be completely the same. So you can just go ahead and copy everything and paste it. You just need to change this foot L. I mean, in my case, maybe in your case, it's different. Make sure you go ahead in your mesh and check if it's called foot L thigh. Yeah, this one right here. Make sure this one is named correctly and this one is being called correctly in the socket location. And this is going to be going into the then one, and this one, instead of instead of right, just hold control on your keyboard and drag it to the left. That easy. And now everything should work. Yeah, probably nothing's working. So this is fine. Let's see what is causing the issue. Okay, there's something in here. Something has a collision. So I believe it's yeah, it's too up in the air. So let's reset the location and make sure it's a little bit lower. Yeah, I think that will do it. Okay, let's see the results. So this is what we're getting right now. If you want this to be bigger, what you can do is go to the materials, brush, line brush instance, and make sure this is the radius is a little bit bigger. You can change the density is the softness of it. So let's change them to see the difference. So this is much bigger right now. The effect is completely different. So let's see if what happens if we go to something like 0.5. I think it will get really small, but let's see. It's so small, it's like a footprint. So as you can see, it's not quite soft, and that's just because yeah, if you can see it, it's not really high poly. If I had more polygons in the mesh, it would have been like much softer, but right now it's just not that soft. But I wouldn't care. It's just it's good for now, so I don't really care. But I'd say this one should be 0.1. It's just the quality is a little bit better. Also, probably the distance should be lower. Maybe something like 15. The density, I'm sorry. Density should be lower. It's not that obvious, really. So maybe 3 was good. The default value is just so good that I wouldn't even change it. Maybe a bit more, 4. Yeah, 4 is fine actually. We could probably change the depth a little bit in this underlined sand. Oh, and something else I forgot to mention is that you don't really need to change the mesh that's set for collisions material to something else, but this is like the mesh you will be seeing, so it should be the sand material we created together, or probably an instance from it. Right click, create an instance, and make sure this is set to this one. So let's go ahead and probably make the depth a little bit bigger. Yeah, it changes so drastically when you change the different small things. Okay, yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure this collision one is not visible. I don't really like it. And make sure it is blocking the visibility channel, because in our third person character we are tracing the visibility channel. And this is pretty much it. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please hit that like button. Cheers, have a great day, bye.